2. Fuck Mason. Alright. Fuck
What?
Mason will be rule 4. Alright, you guys can put some rules in. Oh man.
Fuck me, like literally or figuratively?
We'll leave the rule to be ambiguous. That way, you know, you can, in a court of law, we can have some judges
All right.
interpret the rule as they like, as they please. Alright. Dude, I love the library. It's fucking dank. I gotta put more of the things on the outside that I had. Wait, do you believe in God, Mason? Or are you agnostic? You're agnostic, right?
Agnostic, but I believe in what the shrooms have showed me.
Right. And what? Because I feel like you do have like
Literally
some
how I
kind of.
explain it to people too.
Yeah, but like what? Like go into that because I feel like I've heard you talk about it before, but I don't really know exactly.
Yeah, it's I'm still like kind of wishy-washy on it. Like I don't really have it as like defined as I would want it to be, I guess.
Yeah, like you don't use it as like an identity to like fall behind.
But I do think that there's some shit going on. Like I'm just more into the typical like universal spirituality type
Right.
of thing, where it's like basically God is the
Universe.
interpretation of the universe,
Yeah.
and
Well, I think that's Sorry, go ahead.
and yeah, so it's not like defined and super specific. But I just feel like universe and consciousness, like there's got to be some powerful energy to it that is like.
Well, so when you say like powerful energy, what like I feel like that's a very ambiguous statement.
That's super ambiguous, but yeah, like just
Like there's an underlying
God.
like whether it be meaning or purpose or like some sort of energy that's controlling the way that our existence is manifesting. Is that kind of what you're saying, or is it more that like we have purpose because we were created for a purpose? Because I think those are two separate things.
Oh, I don't fucking know. You might have to go into. You might have to explain that a bit more.
Well, okay, so I think that like, so basically what you're saying is that there's something more than just like the cold dead universe that's around us, right? Like there's some kind of like, as you say, energy underneath it all, behind it all, right?
Well, not behind it all necessarily. I feel like the universe and like space is like outside of our comprehension.
As
But
it is.
within that, there's like different energies that flow in it, you know, and like consciousness itself is like one of those energies that kind of flows within it, and that's so like all of space. We don't even deal with any of that. Like we can't speak to any of that. But
You mean space is like the emptiness
like,
between particles, or space is in like space, like stars in space?
yeah, space, like stars and like other galaxies and shit. We can't speak for all that.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is yeah, there's like here on Earth with consciousness and life and all this shit. It's like a certain like unique energy flow.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know.
So I guess my question is, does that manifest in a way that gives us purpose, or does that manifest in a way that simply because of the fact that it's there, we act the way that we do, right? So like one is like there to give us some like purpose as humans, whereas one is there simply because that's the way the universe is, but it's more than just what we initially suspect of the universe. Because I think that's the difference that I'm trying to question.
Yeah, you're trying to say like, is there a purpose to it?
Well, I'm asking you if you think, you know, that that the energy that you identify as like consciousness or what we are, if there is something like a little bit more than we understand of it, does that imply that there is purpose?
I don't know, man. That's a great thing I struggle debating.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like there's universal intentions almost. Like, have you ever heard Pat's like hippy dippy explanation for it?
Dude, I feel like I never gave Pat I gave Pat a chance, but I wasn't ever in the right mindset of my own to really listen and to like digest his points. I would always just be like, man, this dude's like fucking out of his mind.
Too many drugs. Yeah, and Pat definitely like had his own like crazy, like what's the word?
Interpretation.
Radical approach to it.
Oh yeah. I mean, that dude had done so many fucking drugs, like one after the other in repetition, that like I don't think it's valid to undermine the points that he's making, because I think that if he has valid points, is valid. But I think that I haven't really like listened to what he's actually saying enough to know if it is valid. So I can't really make a statement on it.
I mean, he definitely like mapped all this shit out, dude. Like,
I mean, he thought about it. It was very clear that like he had either experienced something that was very like telling, or that he had sat down and really thought about, you know, what is actually fucking going on. And
well,
whether he's... Sorry, go ahead.
yeah. So he was saying like just doing all these psychedelics made him like kind of get interested into it, but then like in high school he was like he's a total believer of ancient aliens and shit. Pretty fucking radical and pretty fucking crazy, but dude, it makes sense, dude. It's fucking wild. In
the way that we look at like things, right? Like we will know something because it's fact, but we won't really like understand why it's fact. Or I think fact is the wrong word. Why it's reasonably assumed by the masses or by people who are intelligent. And then we accept that because we respect what they say, but we don't actually look into the depth of the argument that's there. And so we don't look into the evidence. And then we hear something contrary to that, and it's very interesting. And so we look all into the evidence of that contrary point, right? And then we're like, oh shit, like that seems like it could be very valid, right? But you by missing and not having the depth of the initial argument, because you just outright agreed with it because like, you know, a bunch of like really respectable like scientists or historians told you that it's true, you don't have like in your brain the two perspectives that are equal. Instead, you've got one that's like, look, man, like all this shit's crazy, like ancient aliens like must have done the pyramids because like how else could it have been built, without like having the contrary to that, where it's like you've looked into the systems in place that were, you know, back there in time, and how technologically advanced these civilizations were, you know, and how just like physically capable it is for humans to build this kind of stuff. And I'm not saying that like I know what happened, but I'm saying that like you have to look at like the evidence of both sides equally, because if you put one evidence over the other without having an equal playing ground of like what you're looking at, then you're going to be biased in some way, right? And I'm not saying like, I'm not trying to like accuse you of anything. I'm just saying that's how it usually goes with these kinds of... I think that I'm trying to make a broader point about how people interpret evidence and ideas in general, because they will look at something and like as a kid they'll accept it as true because like, can you understand that like someone like their parent or like an educator told them like this is reality, right? And then they trusted that, but they don't have like evidence of it. Do you follow with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's exactly like what historians and science is like we don't have like strict evidence. Or like we haven't seen that evidence. You know what I'm saying?
But we trust.
But we trust them. And that was
right.
what a part of Pat's argument was, is that like he like told me how there's like people that are like paid to not release certain information and shit.
Well, of course, it's the government. Like, there's certain information, right? But like,
if they're withholding the information from us,
it's because of aliens, right? And like, I don't want to like disregard your point, but like, you have to acknowledge that like that is a little ridiculous, right? Like, that your first inclination is that they're withholding this information because there's aliens. And I mean, like,
that's
sure,
not the first though. You're kind of
sure. You're right. I am.
Oh, I'm not saying that it is aliens, and I'm not saying that
it ain't.
It ain't. I don't believe in ancient aliens, but I think it kind of makes sense, especially when you think that like, you know, science and shit is not entirely truthful. So what can we believe and what can we not? I'm just saying, you're saying we can't jump the gun and believe in aliens, and likewise we can't jump the gun and believe in what they're telling us about history.
I think you're also doing what I was just doing. So I am not saying that we can't believe in it. I think that belief is based, unfortunately, a lot in anecdotes and in our own personal experience. But I think that like what I'm trying to get at is that like because I think the initial point that set me off on this one is that it sounded like, and my understanding, I guess, was misunderstood in what you said. I thought that you were saying that that's most likely what happened, right? And so I was trying to point out that, like, sure, you can say that there's evidence to point towards ancient aliens, but to say that that evidence is more than the counterpoint to it, I think is disingenuous from my perspective. I feel like there's more evidence to say that it wasn't ancient aliens, but I think that I'm trying to also intertwine like a broader point about how people act in regards to like evidence and their understanding of the world, which is kind of mixing things up, and I apologize for that.
Yeah, the broader point I think is just confusing things because yeah, you're saying that you need to take both sides and weigh them up equally.
What I'm saying is that you have to understand how much evidence you've actually seen of an argument, right? Because like if you go into a situation believing something because you've essentially been told to believe it, or because like it's just your predisposition towards that towards that argument, right? When someone questions that argument, you don't have anything to fall back on. You don't actually have reasoning. You just have this sense that like it's what's right because you've been told it's right. And so it's important when you start looking into certain topics that you really understand where you feel about it and like why you feel that way.
What Pat's whole argument is that the facts, the real life history shit is skewed.
Is wrong, is biased. Right. But I think
it makes sense with some of the shit that he was saying.
Sure. And
because like
there could be evidence that points towards that.
Especially because like, you know, I don't know what they predict, how long they predict humans have been a species, but he was saying that it's far longer than the history books say it, and they don't fund people. They have that as like such a hard fact now that they're not like funding any further research. Like humans just figured out that that's how long we were a species, and that's what they've been going with.
Right. So I agree that that's a possibility, right? But what I also see is a bunch of other possibilities, right? And I think that like oftentimes what we do as people is we'll find something that like we get too fixated on one cause of something else, right? So it's like, what if instead of there are signs that history is being altered by the system in which we exist within, right? And that like it is greatly, because I agree with that sentiment, that like human history is much longer than what we typically learn about, or what is being like taught. But I don't think that that necessarily correlates with the agenda that Pat is implying, right? I think that there's many other reasons for why you would want to alter history in that way. Would you agree?
As opposed to
Oh, dude, you're fucking getting at it with this house. Jesus Christ, man. This is dope. Holy fuck.
Some layout shit.
Jesus, I didn't even know you were doing this. What do you feel the most passionate about in your life? Like, what gives you purpose?
People that fucking throw bottles in the trash.
Damn, dude.
Person right
Yeah,
there.
why are very curious about this. Why are you so environmentally inclined? Like, you seem very passionate about it.
Dude, because that's like the first thing that like, I don't know, man. It's just like the first thing that I got into.
As like an activism kind of thing?
Yeah. Because it's so fucked and it makes sense, like, to get into it, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like the severity of it, if it is what they say it is pretty fucking shocking.
So how severe do you think it's gonna get? How bad?
I don't know, man, because I don't know. It's so tough because like I can't tell if it's like blown out of proportion or if it's realistic.
I think that's fair. I think I think there is evidence on either side to suggest that it is overblown and we will deal with the problems in adequate ways. There's certainly change happening and it is most certainly affected by humans. How bad it's going to be is something that we don't know. It's just fact. We do not know what's going to happen. We know with probability what's probably going to happen, but we cannot with certainty predict. I mean, I'm talking about very large scale things happening, right? Like we know the ocean level is going to go up. We know that ocean acidification is happening. You know, we know that greenhouse gases are causing the warming of the earth, right? But I think that like the larger, the broader ramifications of that, like there was like in the 60s, some guy came out with like some points on like why the environment is important and like how we're damaging it and stuff. And he predicted that by I think it was 2000, all of humanity would have starved and died off by then because of the way we were treating the environment, right? And I think that's like an easy fucking, you know, straw man to fight against, right? Against climate change. But I think that on the other side of things, there is like a valid concern about how and I think the best perspective you can take is that like to disregard climate change is ignorant. To trust a lot of the people that are pushing what it is and to not at least understand that there can be incentives outside of morality is kind of dumb, I think. And to say that we know with certainty what's going to happen is also kind of dumb. I think it's important to look at what could happen and what the data suggests and to trust the experts and say, hey, like this is probably going to happen, so we should prepare for this and we should have preparations for different scenarios. But I just think it's so much more complicated unless like I think people have made it into this massive political thing that a lot of people don't want to touch because it's like, you know, if you say a certain thing or if you follow a certain point to where it should be followed to, you know, it puts you in this camp that is not fun to be in. And I don't support climate change deniers. I think that to say that the climate is not changing is stupid. I think to say that humanity is not affecting the climate in some way is fucking stupid. Now, the extent and the repercussions of that, I will sit down and I will listen to any argument someone has to say about the data that is shown, because I think data should be discussed. Data should be looked at and analyzed, and you should have multiple perspectives about what the implications are. And also, you know, like, sorry, I'm taking over this fucking topic. Do you have anything you want to say about it?
Fucking go on. Yes, the fucking you already.
So I was gonna say,
yeah,
I was gonna say, you know, I think that this is a way of looking at things that a lot of people on the left don't traditionally look at it, and I understand why they don't. And I'm not like trying to guilt or shame anyone. I just think that like a broader perspective is like, you know, if you are putting so much energy, so much money, so much effort into environmental activism, and I think for good reason, like there's very valid reasons to be an environmental activist. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be. What I'm saying is, take from the perspective of someone who is in a developing country or someone who is in the US who is, you know, day to day struggling with issues like hunger and, you know, homelessness or some other issue, right, that's caused by economic disparity, right? And I'm talking specifically because the way whether it be, I guess, the system or the way the economics have turned out, this person is disparaged and this person is suffering because of it, right? And then here you are, or here some group is, right, putting all of this money and effort into the environment. And I think it's valid to have the environment as a priority, right? But I think it's a valid perspective to say, hey, is that the top priority when we have human suffering, that if you say, you know, built 3 more coal plants would prevent that suffering? And I think, you know, this shouldn't be a crazy thing to discuss. I think that's a valid point to consider when you have policy being made, right? Like if you look at, say, like fracking, right? And you look at like the effects of fracking. certainly there are numerous negative effects that have been recorded of fracking. But if that's 0.5% of all fracking procedures, that's still a lot of fracking procedures that are negative. But if you look at the benefits of that, and it's if you have 300 people that are getting affected by poisonous water, right? But then you have 300,000 people who now have energy and houses that are and jobs that are capable of providing them with food and shelter, then it's I'm not saying it's what's right. I'm saying that it's worth considering, you know? I don't know. I just think it's a lot more nuanced than we're sometimes allowed to consider, and that's an important way of looking at things. And I don't know.
That's always the debate, is that like these actions taken to prevent climate change are fucking everything else up.
Well, and what's frustrating... Sorry, did you have something else?
No.
I was gonna say what's frustrating is... Well, you keep... Okay, do you have something else?
I was just that, but I was just gonna keep going with it, but...
Go for it. I want you to. Go for it.
No, I mean, that's all it was. Like, that's always been the great debate.
Right, the back and forth, yeah.
Learn about it and shit. That's like what they talk about, they discuss. Like,
well, I think I don't know. I guess the way that I've learned about it and the way that I've seen it portrayed, especially in media, is very one-sided, and I think that's just a facet of media. But I think talking about the possibility of other scenarios and implications is important to facilitating good discourse. But I guess what I was going to say is what's frustrating is like, my big thing is like nuclear, right? Like nuclear is such a prosperous solution, but it's become so politicized that, like, from my understanding of it, right? I just think it's...
I think nuclear would be a pretty damn good way to go.
Yeah, I mean, it's what France has done, or the French have done, and it's, I mean, you can look at the 3 major disasters that have happened from nuclear power, and it's certainly horrible, and the problem with nuclear power is that when it goes wrong, we don't really know how to fix it, right? We don't, like, Chernobyl is still a fucking shit place. Like, it's just, you fucked up, and that region of the world is now just permanently fucked up for the human lifespan, right? And that implication is certainly something to be considered. But when you look at the science and you look at the safety and the solutions that have now been proposed, nuclear is I personally feel like the benefits outweigh the costs, like, in a very obvious way. That is, I don't know. For me, it's frustrating because it's like the perfect middle ground between, sustainable energy, but also providing a lot of energy and providing realistic amounts of energy that aren't going to take years and different industries to develop. Because I think, like, I'm a supporter of green power, and I'm a supporter of, like electric cars and wind and solar and water, all that stuff. Because I think, like, diversifying your energy sources is super important. But I think that, like, realistically, it requires a lot of negative effects on the environment to create those things, and that's also something to consider. But I would argue that the benefits of clean energy outweigh the negative effects that it will take to get them to where we need to be, because ultimately, like, the future being sustainable should be the goal, I think. But yeah, you have to consider the implications of what it means. It's like, I think there's something like Teslas, like they're like, marketed to be like super environmentally friendly or whatever, right? But I mean, as just like an initial argument, you have to consider where that power is coming from, and then also you have to consider like batteries and electric power, in terms of like the conservation of energy in like a mechanical part through batteries, is pretty bad for the environment. Like, when you use a Tesla up to the point where you can no longer use the batteries, like, we don't really have that great of a method of from my understanding, I might be ignorant and I might not understand how they recycle the batteries properly, but my understanding is that we don't really have a good way of getting rid of those batteries. And that's just like we've solved the problem, but then we've just created the exact same kind of problem where it's like we've created a system that isn't sustainable because we're creating a waste that can't be, taken care of, right? And if our goal is to be sustainable and that like everything we use will go back into the system in some way, then that's not a solution. But I think it's not like that long-term utopian solution. It's a solution that provides certain benefits and certain negatives.
The way I feel like my education has skewed my perspective on the environment is that we're like doomed. We're just fucking doomed to live in a shitty environment with like pollution and melting ice caps and stuff, and we need to make change now. Otherwise, we're screwed in the future. And I think that kind of points the focus to larger issues that will take time to actually we'll see the negative effects of them, instead of focusing on things that are more important things relating to the environment. Sure, I think for me it's like the ocean. I think with the ocean, there needs to be more emphasis and more focus put onto that, instead of this grand scheme we need to fix everything right now.
Yeah, I would agree that the overfishing and ocean acidification is like my biggest concerns, because I feel like even if we lose land, and even if the environment on land is pretty crap and we have to use AC to live anywhere, if the ocean becomes a dead ocean, or even just half as alive as it is now, I don't know. I don't know facts about what would actually happen with that, but I have this understanding and this notion, this feeling that if you don't protect the ocean, we're fucked. We need the ocean. We need what it provides us, and it is at the core the thing that we fall back on when we need food, or when we need ecology, I guess is the word.
Right.
When we need something that provides so much to humanity.
Go to sleep, you bitch.
We did. It's nighttime. It's daytime. You're crazy, man.
Fuck.
All right, I got the
I'm
saddles
watching
and
the
the leads.
stream. It's back.
Do I need
Yeah.
to bring anything?
No, we're good. Yeah, we're going this way.